Hey guys, my name's Kevin Waterman. I play Harry Rooker on Fear Street. You're watching Pop Culture with Pat. Watch out for the Milkman.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today, once again, we are headed back to Fear Street, this time with the Milkman himself, Kevin Waterman. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Pat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So we're gonna obviously talk about Fear Street tonight, but we're gonna first kind of start off for people who maybe aren't, familiar with like some of your like other work and just how you got, kind of got like started. Can you just talk a little bit about, what was it that got you interested in doing like stunt work and acting in like the first place?
Yeah, I mean, if we go way back to when I was a kid, it was shows like, Knight Rider and Dukes of Hazzard and shows like that that I was just obsessed with as a little kid. And I was blown away by these cars and what they were doing. And then eventually, as I got older, I learned that people are actually driving these cars and getting paid to do it. And that was my little childhood dream, right? That was my dream job. This is what I wanted to be when I grew up. Um, and it took until I was 28 before I actually decided, you know what, I'm going to do this and go after it. I had a day job like most people do, and I was working the 70 hours a week in a job that I hated. And I got to the point in my life where I was like, I'm not going to be 80 years old looking back in my life wondering what I could have been working in a job that I despise. So I said, screw it. You only live once, and I made a commitment to go after my childhood dream and to do it, and never look back. So stunt driving is my specialty. It's what I'm kind of known for in the stunt community. I mean, I do other stunts as well, fire stunts and various other things. I'm not a martial artist. I'm not a gymnast or anything. Like, there's so many guys that are just incredible at that kind of stuff, and I have, God bless them, let them do it. Driving is my thing, and that's what I love to do.
That's awesome, man. Man, good for you. Like you said, not especially it's cool that this was something that was a childhood dream of yours, and like it took a little bit longer for you to kind of finally like go for it. But I mean, a lot of people, I mean, myself, when I was a kid, I think I wanted to be like a geologist or something like that, and like just in a completely different area. So I don't feel like you see that happen like too often. So that's cool that you were able to finally get into that field that you wanted. Now, obviously, working in stunts, it can be a very, physically and mentally demanding job. Can you just talk a little bit about what you do to keep yourself in, top performing shape for this kind of job?
Not enough. I don't do nearly what I should. And so for me, I mean, yes, I eat really healthy and I stay in shape and I work out and I train. As a driving specialist, I don't need to be in as good a shape as a fighter, a martial artist or a gymnast or somebody that just is a tricker,
Yeah.
parkour guys and stuff like that. Those guys are they're insane and they're super talented and I have the most respect for them, but they're training, doing their thing all the time. I'm training as well on a regular basis, but I'm training in my specialty in my craft, which is driving. But you still have to be, in the right mindset when you're put in these situations. You still have to have a clear head. So, I have a very healthy lifestyle as far as what I eat and drink, and I exercise a lot and stuff like that as well. Which, uh, you know, when you're put into these situations, you've got to be on your game, and you've got to have the right things going in your body.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, especially with just with like yeah, with driving, like you said, like I mean, because it's something a car is a weapon. So I mean, if you don't handle it right, something
Exactly.
can go wrong. So I
Yeah.
mean, how I know you said this has kind of been like a childhood dream, of yours or whatever, but what kind of as far as like training for like driving and stuff like that, what kind of training and stuff do you do in order to get to the point where you're at like now as far as like, that goes?
Well, I do something very unique, or I have something very unique. A couple of years ago, I started a company, Dynamic Stunts, and what I do, I found a shop. I found a place where I can work on cars and store them, and also a place where I can drive. It's a big parking lot, and I can go and I can practice. And other stunt drivers that are in the film industry can also go there and practice at least once a week and practice driving in a safe, controlled environment. And until I had this place opened up, we always had to just find an abandoned parking lot somewhere in order to train and practice. And
Jeez.
no fun when you're looking over your shoulder, wondering when somebody's going to call the cops and whatever. It's like you could be there for 5 minutes maybe, and it was no. I didn't even do it because it was too risky,
Yeah.
and it sucked because it doesn't matter what discipline, whether it was martial arts or any kind of fighter or a gymnast or even like any specialty, right? Divers and whatever it is, you can go somewhere to train
Yeah.
and to be an expert at your craft, and you don't want to get rusty, you want to be at the best you can be. Well, drivers never really had that, and that's why I decided to take the plunge and find this location and open up this business where I can allow people to go and train. And now I've got a fleet of stunt cars, and I've got an awesome group of people that come out on a regular basis and drive. And you can check us out on Instagram at we're at Dynamic Stunts, and you can see there's a bunch of videos of what we do and what we do on a daily basis out there, and it's so much fun.
That's so cool. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, that's awesome that you were able to, you guys didn't really have a place and you're just like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to create a place for us to go to and other people can come and do it. And, just so that way we're able to like own our skills. That's really cool, man.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I mean, as far as, so obviously you've done a lot of, I looked at like your IMDb and it's just like crazy, all the different, little like things that you've done like throughout like your career. I saw like, I think like Endgame, Logan, like Black Widow, different things like that. It's super impressive. And obviously, what a lot of people are, I think catching attention of you now is, from like Fear Street. So how to kind of start, things off with that, how did you get how did that, I guess that role come about for you?
Well, it came from a show that I had done previously. I played Florida Man
Oh, okay.
uh, on the TV show Atlanta on FX, and that stemmed from another show that I did as a stunt guy. It was a stunt acting role where I was a creepy stunt guy. It was on the originals, and I was
Oh, okay.
literally cast as creepy stunt guy, and it was pretty funny. But um, so a couple of people knew me from that, and then I got the job on Atlanta as Florida Man, and the stunt coordinator of that show, Andy Rusk, was talking to my buddy Lloyd, who played the Nightwing Killer.
Yep.
And Lloyd was basically assisting. He was the assistant stunt coordinator on Fear Street, and they were looking for somebody to play the Milkman, and they wanted a stunt guy to do it. And so Lloyd was talking to uh, Andy, and he said, "Dude, you got to talk to Kevin. You got to reach out to Kevin Waterman. He's like, he plays this awesome creepy dude, and you'll at least get him an audition and get him in front of Lee, the director." So that's what happened. Basically, it was a referral, and I don't know if they auditioned anyone else or not. Honestly, I went in and I put a little thing on tape, and they showed it to Lee, and then I went in and in person I met her, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're creepy as hell. Will you please be the milkman?" I said, "Sure." So
Now,
yeah, it was pretty cool. And it's definitely, I mean, I've done a fair amount of acting stuff as well, but it's usually a cop or an FBI guy or something where we
yeah.
got to take somebody down. And I mean, that's really common for stunt guys and girls to get thrown a line or two and to have to do some acting. But to play a whole character like this was definitely something very different for me.
Now, is that something say you're like, oh yeah, referred to as like creepy stunt guy. So is that something you're like, hey, that that's really cool? It's like, or I'm known as the creepy stunt guy. Do you take that as like a compliment, or is that kind of
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't be the the college football stud or anything, right? I mean, that's but it's fine. I own it and I have a great time with it and I
yeah?
play it and yeah, it's all good. I mean, it's like you got to
That's
be known for something, right? And
yeah,
yeah, I guess it could be worse. As long
yeah,
as people understand that it's just a character, right?
yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome. And you play Henry Rooker, the mailman. Now, were you familiar at all with the Fear Street books going into this series, like at all, or like R.L. Stein, like in general?
I knew of Goosebumps, and when I've got a bunch of friends that worked on the Goosebumps movies and whatnot, and so I knew of who R.L. Stein was and the book series, but I had never read Fear Street, and I was not familiar with it until I looked it up when they told me what it was, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm pretty sure I did see these around when I was, in elementary school or whatever, but I wasn't particularly familiar with them.
Yeah, no, for myself, like I was definitely more like growing up, I was more of like a goosebump kid. I
Yeah.
think I had like heard of like Fear Street, but I think at the time, it coming out, I was more like the goosebumps like level. So I think Fear Street was like kind of aimed at like a little bit like, like older at the time.
Yeah.
But now I'm like digging into them. But it's funny because like I've had Jordan D. Natale, I've had
Mhm.
Jack Benet, Sam Brooks, them on the show. And like kind of like same thing, weren't really familiar with like the material like going into it, but then like obviously, started looking into it after. So it's kind of cool that you guys kind of came into it with a fresh approach and didn't have any like preconceived like notions or anything like that as far as like the material goes.
Right. Yeah. There was no expectations or anything. I treated it like another cool stunt job, and then I quickly realized, what I was getting myself into when they sent me to LA and they're like, all right, we're going to life cast you, which is the whole mold of their face and the custom fitted contact lens and all this other stuff. I'm like, all right, this is no joke. Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And now how did you, because I've also had, I don't know if you know him, he's another stunt actor, James Dude Courtney. He like plays like Michael Myers for like the current Halloween films.
Okay.
I've talked to him, I've had him on the show, and like so I was curious as far as you go with the Milkman, how did you get into the mindset of a killer for this role?
Well, to some people it comes naturally, but no, you know, it's weird because as you're going through the makeup and hair process and going through the works as we call it, and it was a 3.5 hour long process. First of all,
Oh,
at first they got it down to 2.5.
yeah.
Christopher Nelson and those guys are incredible at what they do, and my hats are off to them because they're so good. But they you know, it's super early in the morning and I'm just kind of, thinking about it and getting into it. But once I'm fully made up as the milkman and I've got the suit on and the contact lens and everything, and I look into the mirror and I'm just like, holy crap, you're a creepy motherfucker. I'm like, and then I just start thinking about, I'm like, who is this guy? What is his backstory? Because they never told me his backstory. I had no idea. And people ask me that all the time. They're like, hey, what's the milkman's backstory? I don't know. I made up a backstory for him. And I just think about that and I kind of go into it, but I have fun with it. I really had a fun time creeping out my buddies on set, the other stunt guys that were working, the stunt coordinators and whoever else, where I would really just kind of just play it up and, have fun with it. But it really wasn't, it was more like like a joke to me. I was having fun with it, more than anything, which is why I like did the smile and made it like I was having fun rather than I was like trying to kill these people all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
No, that makes sense. Now, did you, because you said, obviously there was some like early morning, like, shoots and stuff like that. When you were in like the makeup, the getup and everything, was there ever any points that you actually scared yourself?
That I what?
That you actually scared like yourself because you looked in like the mirror or something
Oh,
and
I
you,
scared myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. It's when you forget, when you're like, wait, just sitting in your trailer or something and waiting and waiting. And, they're doing some other scenes and you're not, you're just on your phone or whatever. And then I get up and I go to the bathroom and I completely forget. And yes, it's like a holy shit moment where I'm like, God, it's, and I'll tell you, I mean, even looking at it in person, it's really convincing. I mean,
oh
the,
yeah,
the work that they do is so good. It's yeah, you forget. I mean, it's that good. It's you forget about it and you become comfortable in it. Once you kind of get used to the prosthetics, you don't think about it as much anymore, especially if if it's cooler weather, if it's not too hot. When
yeah,
it's too hot, then you'll sweat and you'll build up this little pool in your chin of sweat. No, that's a good time. But
yeah.
uh,
No, I'm
but
definitely,
yeah, it's easy to forget and to scare the shit out of yourself.
I've worn a lot of I wear a lot of like Halloween masks because we do like a haunted house and stuff. So whenever it's like warm and yeah, you just start sweating, I know exactly like what you're talking about. That's not fun at all. So hopefully you had some cool like shoots so you didn't have to kind of deal with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, anything in the mall was very tolerable. They had AC pumping in there, but yeah, it was when we were outside for the first scene where I was just
Uh,
murdering a housewife, behind the fence. that was brutal,
Yeah.
and yeah, but it was fine.
And I was actually going to ask you. You brought it up. So what is the backstory that you came up with as far as like the Milkman goes?
Um, well, as far as the burns, my story, it was a war thing. Uh, he got burned in war early on as a 18, 19-year-old or something like that,
Yeah.
and he was it was PTSD stemmed basically from war and from dealing with that kind of stuff and getting burned, and he didn't have any support from family and that sort of thing, and women in his life were not there for him, and ended up having this crazy side of him that took over and had his way with women basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's I think that's a great story too. Like, did you like bring that up to like Lee at all, like while you guys were like shooting or anything, or was that just kind of
No, she had enough going on.
that's awesome though. If they, because I know like I was talking to you, if if as far as the other show that you did with we watched a movie, if you end up doing or if there ends up being like a spinoff with the Milkman, I would that would be a story I would be really fascinated to see like how that would play out as far as like if they used some of that like material.
Yeah, for sure. And it all depends on the writers and what they decide to do with it. If they decide to do a spin-off, and for folks who haven't seen, that interview you're mentioning, nobody's talked to me about it yet. There were rumors at the time of filming. Lee was said, "Oh, it'd be super super cool to do this," and she's been interviewed a couple of times saying the same thing since Fear Street came out, where she said she would love to do a Milkman spinoff along with the Ruby Lane and some of the other killers and stuff. And all the fans are asking for it. Everyone wants to see it,
Oh yeah.
and I don't blame them, because it's like, all right, who are these guys? How did they get to this point? And there's a lot of theories and rumors about us possibly being related and other things like that, and it's very possible. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to do a spinoff. I think it'd be super cool to go back and see where these characters came from and how they got to this point. See what their
Yeah.
stories are. And I think the Milkman is especially interesting though because he's a little. Everyone asks if we're possessed, right? They think that we're possessed in these films, which I think we kind of are. We're kind of
Yeah.
controlled by this blood or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But the Milkman actually has a personality
Yeah.
because he's like excited and he's smiling and stuff like that. So he's a little different than the rest of them, I feel.
Yeah, no, actually, now that you say that, I'm like thinking about like the couple films, and you're right. Like all the other ones, they're kind of like have like that focus. Even like Ruby Lane, Jordan Di Natale, she's
Mhm.
always like singing that like same song. She came up with like a theory, or she told me that in our interview that she thought when she or I think she talked to Lee when she died, she was like singing that song, or like before she got possessed she was like
Right.
singing that song, and that's why it's like always like replaying in her head. But yeah, no, you're right. Your character definitely, yeah, he like kind of looks at people, smiles and stuff like that. So maybe he isn't quite fully possessed or whatever, as like the other characters are.
Yeah, there's something a little different about him, for sure.
Now, question for you. I was curious, and I don't know if this has been like brought up, but do you know was the Milkman, character by any chance was he based off Michael Myers or influenced by Michael Myers?
I I mean, we've seen all the similarities in the films with the cinematography and even like the locations where they film and the suit, and the stuff that he's wearing.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many similarities. I have to think that it was at least influenced
a tribute. Yeah.
by Michael Myers, right? I mean, I have to think so. No one ever mentioned it to me.
Okay.
Uh, they didn't say that it was. It was like, and which I'm glad. I mean, I didn't. I don't want to copy another killer. Like I wanted Milkman to be his own,
Yeah.
and but I don't know. I don't know if it was, but I have to imagine there was. I mean, there was definitely some. They paid tribute to a lot of the classic slasher films, right? I
Yeah.
mean, Scream, obviously, and there's so many similarities. I have to think so.
Yeah, there was like for one particular scene, I was, rewatching the movies, and one for me that like sticks out because I'm a big horror fan. When you're in the mall and I believe it's part three, like 1666, so like the end of that. And when you go up one of the security guards, you come up behind him and you like stab him.
Mhm.
That kind of reminds me of like from Halloween 2 when like Michael Myers comes up behind like the nurse and like picks her up with like the knife or whatever.
Right.
Not like quite the same, but I don't know. To me, it just kind of gave me like the hint of that. So that's why I was like curious if it was brought up, but it's kind of interesting that it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. But I I mean, they were pretty smart about the way they filmed these movies. And when I mean, you see a lot of the edits and stuff now, and the comparisons between the two and the screenshots, and it's like, oh my goodness, it
Yeah.
almost looks like a remake if you look at just the screenshots or some of these edits or whatever, the similarities of some of these. I mean, like the stab in the first movie, you know, when
Oh,
where he
the skull killer from the
yeah,
first.
skull mask.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, where he first kills her, right? You know, and stabs her in the back or whatever. It's so much like Scream. You know,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's there's definitely similar. I mean, the mask itself is a very similar feel.
Yeah.
You know, with
Yeah.
things.
No, for sure.
Um,
No, I have to agree with that. So yeah, I was just like curious because I was like, yeah, even like the way it's not quite the same or whatever, but even the way that you like walk, especially like in the mall and stuff like that, kind of like that little shuffle, like it's a little bit different, but it just totally for me, it gave me Michael Myers vibes. And I was like, there had to be some kind of like influence or something like that, like there. So cool.
yeah, and the walk was something that I did in the audition that Lee really liked, and um, I actually didn't do it as much at first when I was first playing the Milkman because I had all these other things going on, and I didn't really forget about it, I guess, but I just wasn't playing it as ridiculous as I did in the audition. And she was like, Kevin, she's like, will you? She's like, you're not really doing the walk as much as like this creepy, like arrogant kind of walk that you were doing, and as much as you did in the audition. Can you do a little bit more of that? I'm like, yeah, okay.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you like that. So and she actually gave me a song. She's like, I got a little inspiration for you. And she whispered in my ear, she was like, all right, the song, this is the perfect. She was like, I've been thinking about it. This is a perfect song for you. She was like, you know that song, My Milkshake Brings All the Boys to the Yard? She's like, that's your song. I'm like, yeah. So as I'm walking, every time you see me walking, doing my thing, you know, I'm like, milkshake brings all the girls to the yard. I'm like thinking about this, except for it's girls, of course, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm doing this as I'm walking, and it was actually perfect. It really
That,
just yeah. So this is what I'm thinking.
that now when I go back to rewatch these films and I see your character, I'm just gonna think of you just like humming that
Yeah,
song like in your mind while you're shuffling around.
yeah. No, I'm waiting for someone to make an edit now. Someone's gonna have to make an edit out there
Oh
with
yeah.
that as I'm walking. Yeah.
That'll be out there soon for sure. Now, as far as like yourself, too, do you consider like, going into this, were you a big like horror fan like yourself?
Uh, I wouldn't consider myself a big horror fan, but I do enjoy it. You know, I like the horror movies, and I appreciate the slasher films. And I mean, it's like it's different than when I was a kid before I got into the film industry. Now we're so desensitized
Oh,
from films because it's like when you're there and you see how the blood gags work and everything, and you like I know when stuff's gonna happen now, and all I'm thinking about is, oh, that's a cool gag, or oh, I love how they did that, or I love that camera angle, and it's like it. Unfortunately, I tried not to do that when I'm watching these films, but
yeah.
um, so it's weird. I have a different appreciation for them than most fans do.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
but
understandable.
there are films like Haunting of Hill House. I was a huge fan of that.
Like,
My buddy Chuck was the stunt coordinator of it, and I actually worked on it and doubled one of the guys on it a little bit.
yep.
But it like the I mean that series was just I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but
Oh,
it blew my mind. It was so well done and so creative and well written, and it's just yeah I'm a huge fan of movies like or shows like that.
yeah, no, Mike Flanagan, he's definitely like one of my favorite directors, especially in horror right now. I don't know if you had seen Doctor Sleep, but that's probably one of my favorite recent like horror, actually just like recent like films in the past
So
like several years.
yeah, and my buddy was a stunt coordinator of that as well. So yeah, I'm very familiar with all of those. Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah, no. So I was curious because like some people, they come into like horror roles and it's like they might be fairly big like fans, but sometimes they come in, they're like, nope, I don't really watch like horror at all. So it's always interesting to see kind of the two different like perspectives. Now, no, you were saying so the makeup prosthetics and stuff like that, it took, you said, like 3.5 hours to like 2.5 hours.
Right.
What was that? So what was that process like? I know you kind of mentioned a little bit you had to get like casted and things like that for like your head and everything and your body.
Yeah, yeah. It was just from the neck up. It was a full what they call a life cast, and the custom fitted contact lens as well. So once they did all that, there's actually 4 pieces of prosthetics that they put on my Instagram, KW Stunts at KW Stunts. You'll see a time lapse of me going through the process of them turning me into the Milkman. So you'll see there's 4 different individual pieces that they glue on, and um, they've got to cut each of the little pieces out because it comes as a bigger piece, and then they glue it on and they just trim it all up once it's on. And there's a part of a wig, just like half of a wig that goes on as well. Um, and a lot of airbrushing and a lot of painting and little detail work that really brings it all together. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, the work. And actually Christopher Nelson, I mentioned James Jude Courtney. He's the guy who does the special effects and stuff for like Halloween, like the current like Halloween series. That guy's work is just like insane. Like his whole team too, not even not just like him, but like his whole team, just like the especially like your prosthetics and makeup, just the way that your face looked and everything, like that was unbelievable. Was it like, I know you said you got used to it, but was it heavy like to wear like on your head?
It not uncomfortably heavy. I mean, it was like it. You could feel it, but no, it really wasn't. It really didn't weigh anything. I mean, it was. I mean, I would honestly forget about it. As long
Wow.
as it wasn't too hot, I would
Yeah,
forget to have it on because it moved with my face. I mean, I could smile with it. I could whistle. I could do all the things. I could wink. And I mean, it was just like, yeah, it was moved with me. I mean, it was pretty
that's
awesome.
wild.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, and as far as so one of like the scenes, as far as like, your kills like in the movies that like comes to mind because watching the movies, I was like, you almost like forgot going into these. You're like, oh, it's kind of like you think Fear Street, think R.L. Stein, and I knew that they were rated R going into them, but watching the films, seeing some of the stuff that happened, still kind of surprised me just because I'm like, you're used to, you grew up with this stuff and it's made for like kids and like maybe young teens. And then you have a scene like at the end of part two, 1978, where you're going after the girls with the other like killers and you're stabbing them like repeated times. Can you just kind of like break down like filming like that scene?
Uh, yes. I mean, that's when we were all coming through the field, and it was the very final
Yeah,
piece. Yeah. It was. Yeah, I mean, they started us off way in the woods, deep in the woods, and having it just start all coming into to these 2 girls together, and they would film from, of course, different angles,
yeah,
and we had to time it just right for my particular scene. I was just off camera, and I had to time it right with Sadie to grab her immediately as she turns around. So she turns around, I grab her, spin her around, and I do my little creepy thing or whatever, and then I stab her in the stomach and then spin her again and toss her to the ground. Of course, there's a pad on the ground. But it was man, it was a long day and it was super late into the night. So I'm like, I had, 3 or 4 dirty chais in me at the time. I was trying to, keep the energy going at that point. But
yeah.
uh, it was a very fun scene. I mean, with the tree lit up and everything, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it was like super intense and just like I was surprised by, the amount of violence. You just like, you stabbing her like a couple times, you got blood going everywhere. So I imagine it must have taken a while to film, that scene.
It did, and they cut so much out of it. I mean, I don't even think that we saw. I don't remember if we saw Ruby in that scene or if we saw Billy Barker in that. Oh no, we did see Billy, but
Yeah.
there was. Oh, it was not the grifter, the big dude. I don't think
Yeah.
we saw him in the final edit, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I mean, we were stabbing them so much. I mean, it was just over and over and over and over, and several takes of just blood everywhere because they wanted different camera angles and lenses and things like that. And oh my god, we were just covered in it.
And it sounds like I'm sure they probably had to cut some stuff out probably to get it to pass, like as far as like rating like wise goes, probably.
Yeah, and I think it was just unnecessary. I mean, it was just too much. I mean, that's very common for us, anyways. I mean, to
Yeah.
just and then they just use the best of the best at the end of the day, and depending on what cuts together the best, and it
Actually, if I remember correctly, 78 was the last one to get filmed, I think, right? Because they did 94 and 1666. Like the first, those two were first, and then 78, I think, was the last one. If I remember, like an interview with Lee.
right. Yep. Yeah, you get a better memory than I do. But now that you're mentioning it, yes, because I went back. I was on another show. I was filming. What was it Greenland?
Yeah.
The Gerard Butler film. So I was on that in between the two, and it worked
Oh
out
wow.
perfectly. I was able to go back and do 78 at the end after I was wrapped on Greenland.
Jeez. Yeah, no, because I feel like I remember it was like an interview with her or something, and she might have actually mentioned it now that I asked you about that, saying that, she got to 78 and it was just like, you had been filming these three films like back to back to back. And so she was just like, I want more blood, and was just kind of like, let's wrap this thing up. So that kind of makes sense what you're saying right there then.
Oh yeah, they went after it. It was great.
Now, and speaking of like kills, because you had a couple, you had that one, you had the housewife, you had like the security mall like cops and stuff like that. What was your favorite one to just like shoot like overall?
Well, they were all a little different in their own way, but I think the best one is for me. I didn't kill Ziggy,
Yeah,
clearly.
well, yeah, technically she died, but got brought back to life. Yeah,
Right, right. But the second time, see, I didn't even know. All right, so I filmed the 1994 first, right?
yeah,
So I killed older Ziggy before I'd even done the other one. I didn't even know about that scene or like that, that I was gonna have to kill young. And even when I killed younger Ziggy, I didn't know that it was the same girl that I had previously killed,
yeah,
right? So I didn't put it together, but no, well, Sadie Zink, first of all, she's awesome. She was so much fun to work with, and she was super cool, wanting to do everything. And so I really enjoyed working with her,
yeah,
knowing her from Stranger Things. And
yeah,
she's, as my goodness, when it comes to young talent, it's like it always impresses me when somebody at that age is so professional and so great at what they do.
mhm,
So I enjoyed it for that aspect. But as far as
yeah,
the kill itself, older Ziggy was way more fun because Lee kind of just let me run with it as far as the creepiness goes.
yeah.
And like this, they'll come up from behind and the look and the lick and everything. I just we didn't do that in every take, but that ended up being the one that they used. Which when I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe they actually used that take.
So, like, why did you pick that
Like,
one?
why did I do that? It is the creepiest thing I've ever seen, but apparently that's what they liked. So,
Ended up
so it
working.
was fun. We had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes you just like do stuff and like sure enough, the one that you think that is like they're probably not gonna pick, that's the one that they're gonna end up picking just because
Right,
it's so
right.
weird and out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you weren't the Milkman, what other character would you have liked to have played in the Fear Street trilogy?
Ruby Lane. Yeah, Ruby
Okay,
Lane. Yeah, Ruby. No.
there you go. Yeah, no, she's definitely like I said, I had Jordan on the show, and you can tell that she had a lot of fun, like playing that role, and a lot of
Yeah,
people really connected with that character. So I think, yeah,
for sure.
definitely between like you and Ruby Lane, like I think a lot of people want to see more, on those two killers, like for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I, I like the Nightwing Killer is pretty cool for me because he got to do a lot of stuff. And that was my buddy Lloyd, who was a stunt double and did 99% of it. Anything with the mask on,
Yeah,
and he did awesome. I'm like, you got to do so much cool stuff, And when we're greedy, stunt guys are greedy when it comes to wanting to do stuff. Usually, it's like we want to work, we want to get, to do stuff and to have fun, and um, so when I hear about it, I'm like, oh, you guys are doing that scene. I'm like, oh man, I wasn't even like Milkman wasn't even in the first one, except for like just that little tickle like at the beginning with the housewife.
yeah.
And so I was like, man, I'm like, oh, like even in the second one, I was hoping that he was kind of in it more and stuff. And I'm like, just jealous. So I'm like, man, you guys got to do all this stuff. I'm like, so it would have been cool to be one of those other killers, but I can't complain. I'm super happy with what I did
Yeah.
get.
Yeah, I mean, hey, your character definitely stands out, and a lot of people, they like the Milkman, but yeah, I mean, all the killers, like, even the Nightwing Killer, the skull mask. I love the skull mask, like just like the outfit and stuff, which I'm pretty sure is taken from like one of the books. There's like a book cover that has like
Oh,
that
right.
exact like costume.
Yep.
And then of course like Lloyd with he played the Nightwing Killer
Yep.
was like a total tribute to like Jason and Friday the 13th.
Totally. Yeah,
But
totally. Did you get Noah on? Have you talked to Noah,
no,
who played Skull Mask?
no, but I wanna get Noah and I want to get Lloyd like on the show. Like I think that would be cool to get both of them on as well.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You should try to get them on there. I'll reach out to them for you too. They're good buddies of mine. They're great.
Awesome, perfect. Yeah, no, I would definitely. I'd be curious to just get their thoughts like on like the series like as well. Now I know a lot of people like I'm sure you've probably been like asked this or whatever, and a lot of the other cast members. Who do you think took the book at the end?
Um, I really have no idea. I thought about this too, and like, there's so many theories on it and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm glad that somebody did, because it just means that there's a chance we're going to come back for part 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever. Um, I, I yeah, the audience isn't going to like my answer because I really don't have a good one. I have no idea.
I actually
Uh,
saw someone, which it might actually be someone who was asking me, about the interview. And I mean, it kind of looks like it's someone like paused the clip and they said it looks really similar to Josh, like one of the
oh,
kids. It looks
yeah.
really similar to like his hands. And I was
Mhm.
like, I mean, it kind of looks like his hands, like, and I guess because like where he knew all about like the killers and stuff like that, and so maybe he like took the book at the end for some reason. But I was
Mhm.
just like, man, some of the stuff that people are able to catch in like, in these films and stuff like that, it's like I that would have like totally like gone over my head.
Yeah, and the reality is, I would not look at the hands as, for me anyways, as a clue as to who took it.
Yeah.
Because the reality is they probably got a PA to do it that day,
Yeah.
not the actual person who took the book that we hopefully will find out in season 4, because they'll be like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just somebody grabbing it. Like, let's just use a PA, whoever's available.
Yeah.
That's my guess. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm screwing this up, and maybe they're like, what? No, we
It was
whatever.
it was a setup. What are you talking about?
That was Ziggy. What are you talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably there's probably a pretty good chance that was probably like the case. And they're probably I mean, and they probably had an idea that people would be looking into it, but maybe not as much as like as they like realized. But
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
would kind of to to wrap start wrapping things up, I mean, like where I know obviously you'd be down to like possibly do like a spin-off like with like the Milkman and stuff like that with the killers, like is there anywhere else like that you would maybe want to see Fear Street kind of go in the future, whether it's like another couple films or things like that?
I'm with most of the fans where I like the idea of the spin-offs to see the backstories on some of these characters. I mean, of course, everyone talks about Ruby Lane and Milkman, but Billy Barker for me is like, all right, who is this crazy kid? Like, nothing,
Yeah.
almost nothing, and uh, the grifter, whatever whatever his name is, it's like, yeah, I kind of want to see how their stories and how they got to this point as well. And there's a bunch of others, that we that aren't even really seen, that are mentioned in, on the on the wall, on the rock wall, whatever, the carvings of the wall and that kind of stuff. So it's like they could do so many different spin-offs with this thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's the way to go. I mean, I think you got to go and give the fans what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, yeah. I would, I would think it's safe to say, I thought that the show, like the movies, were gonna be, popular. I thought they were gonna be pretty popular, but I had no idea they were gonna take off, in the way that they did. I mean, it went from something where it's kind of like when I first watched like Stranger Things, I was like, oh, this looks like a really cool show that I would enjoy. And I remember I loved it. And then like the next couple days, like social media, just seeing like everybody else start like posting about it. What has the reaction been like, just for you, like overall too?
It's completely different than everything I'm used to. It's stunt performers are usually the last ones to get recognized for the work that we do. And like, there's been a push for an Oscar for stunt performers for years, and there still isn't. And
Yeah.
so it's weird. It's weird for me to be cast, anyways, right?
Yeah.
And so I was on an acting contract. I was a cast on Fear Street. So that was kind of weird anyways. And it's oddly, actors and stunts are both part of the Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're still treated a little bit differently. But after the fact, like now, since the movies came out and, like my social media is just blown up and I get so many, messages and requests and it's like when I see people like artwork, there's some amazing artwork that
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen of man and all the characters. And I mean, it's so cool. And I love interacting with people and, talking to them. And sometimes I kind of will play like I'm responding as the Milkman,
Yeah.
when people do stuff and I mess with them and it's really fun. And, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it actually. It's pretty enjoyable. And yeah, I tell people, I'm like, listen, I'm no different than anyone else. They freak out, if I respond to them. I'm like, listen, I'm no different than you. I'm like, just because I was on TV, I'm like, I'm nobody special. I'm like, if anybody wants to pursue this, they can, and like they just got to give it everything they've got and pursue whatever dreams that they have, and they can do it, and they're not going to be any different. So.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm totally into the crowd and to the fans, and I love responding and talking to them and shooting the shit.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, man. That you kind of you take it in stride too, and it's not something where it's like you let it get to your head or anything like that. That's and funny enough, I mean, I know you probably respond to a bunch of people, but before I reached out to you, I think it was I had posted the interview with Jordan Di Natale, and I'm pretty sure you commented on the post and you responded as if you were like the Milkman, and you said because I think I posted something about her saying like you always hurt like the ones you love, like her song, and you responded something along the lines of like sometimes you do it on purpose or something like that. And
Oh, right. Yes.
I was like, oh, that's so cool that you just like you were playing like in character, even just like through like social media and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I do it frequently when people are like, "Oh my God, I had nightmares about you last night," and I'll respond with like, "I'm like, you smell differently when you're asleep."
That's fantastic. That's awesome, man. Well, hey, I'm not sure how much you can say as far as like future projects and stuff like that go, but where can fans, kind of catch you next? And is there anything else you just want to say to the fans, like in general?
Well, first of all, it's thank you, right, to all the fans because we can't do this without them, and I appreciate all the feedback that I've been getting, and all the uh, the edits and the artwork and things like that is super cool. So feel free if anybody has anything, I'd love to hear from you. Um, it's a little weird how many people have requested that I lick them and murder them, but whatever, it's all good. Uh, no, as far as future projects, I'm bouncing around doing various things, mostly stunt driving and stunt work. And, um, I'm actually going to be heading to Saudi Arabia here in a couple of months for a few months to work on another Gerard Butler film, actually, which is going to be really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, you can check out, my social media at KW Stunts, and then at Dynamic Stunts is my stunt driving company page, and you can see a bunch of stuff that we do there as well. But yeah, I mean, I hope that I get to talk to you again, and the next time it will be about the Milkman spinoff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hey man, and yeah, make sure guys, go give him both him and his, his business page, give them a follow on Instagram. And just thank you again, man. I really appreciate you, Kevin, taking time out of your super busy schedule to come on and do the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate it, Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And definitely, we'll definitely get you back on the show at some point. So thanks
Let's do
again,
it.
man.
Let's do it. Absolutely. Hey guys, my name's Kevin Waterman. I play Harry Rooker on Fear Street. You're watching Pop Culture with Pat. Watch out for the Milkman.